Elon Musk has his big factory, Giga Berlin. If they ran that plant full blast, nobody within 100 miles of Berlin would have drinking water.
Today on Time We Discuss, I have Tommy with me. Tommy, thank you for joining me.
My pleasure.
Awesome. So, Tommy, you are a water expert. So, I'm not even going to pretend I know what all this covers. I'm going to kind of let you just kind of go ahead and swim with it. What's life like being a water expert?
When most people hear the word water, they think of their tap, or they think of Matt Damon helping people in third world countries get safe drinking water, or their own boiling alert when, something happens locally. And the concept of water is we know it's important and we know it's vital, but we really don't understand how big of an industry, how large the scope is when you talk about water. And I really didn't. My first job, I got out of a pre-med curriculum and didn't want to go to med school. A doctor hired me in the dialysis industry to fix a problematic water system. I didn't know anything about water purification technology. They sent me to a seminar to study with Jonas Salk. I came back a lot sharper. I fixed the system. I became an expert in medical water systems, and then it just grew from there. A lot of my career has been helping industry purify water. And the water quality in various manufacturing processes would amaze you. For instance, water for making up an automobile, for painting and coating, putting the chemicals on the auto body, has to be 10 times cleaner than that IV bag that's going into your bloodstream.
Wow.
And there are even higher standards than that when you get into microprocessors. My course of work has brought me to design water systems for the food and beverage industry, for pharmaceuticals, for the power industry, automotive industry, the chemical industry, you name it. If there's a smokestack, there's a water application inside that.
So talk to me about your daily work. What do you do on a typical day? What does a typical day look like for you?
I am consulted on a wide array of things. I have a company that makes aluminum doors, and they need a water system so that when they dip the chemicals off, it dries spotless, because that's a lot easier than having workers have to shine it with chemicals or whatnot. So one of my involvements as we speak is that I have designed a water system, accepted a purchase order. So I'm in the process now of acquiring equipment, scheduling with the plant, making sure they got the right piping and electricity and connections for my PLC to get into their system. And in the next 2 or 3 weeks, we'll be installing that water system. I also get a lot of consultations. Well, I guess not a lot, but my share of them. And it could be a client asking me, why are our automobile paint peeling off? We're painting these cars. We're finding out 3 weeks later that the zinc didn't adhere. And now I got 1,000 car bodies with bubbles up. So I get called in to fix a water system. A pharmaceutical company may have a bacterial growth problem. So then my hat is to go through the individual pieces and find out where that bacterial contamination may be coming from, having to interact with laboratories and technicians and taking samples, and then engineering a solution for it.
You said you went to school for pre-med.
Yeah.
Okay. But it's interesting because I think of water, water systems. I think of maybe, environmental science. I think
Sure.
Some kind of chemistry. You talked about the paint peeling off of the cars. Maybe there's some chemistry involved.
Yes.
Or maybe even not architecture, but something in that vein where you're designing systems. So my question for you, did you have to get any other additional training? Did you pick up all this knowledge, on the job, so to speak? How did that all pan out for you?
Well, so first off, my pre-med curriculum was very scientifically oriented. I had triple major. I majored in biology, chemistry, and mathematics, and I had a minor in physics. So the chemistry of water was pretty common to me. I also worked, I come from a steel mill community, Youngstown, Ohio. And while I was in college, I had a extracurricular extra points course, and we were sampling the Mahoning River. When I got hired into this dialysis clinic, I really didn't know anything about all the technology, softening, reverse osmosis, ultrafiltration. I had to bring myself up to speed with that. So I had vendors that were selling us a bunch of stuff and kept trying to sell things, and the system wasn't getting any better. So a light bulb went off, and I said, well, there's something missing here. I need to study this. So I started studying water manuals and talking to the vendors, reading any material that I could, but it was easy to digest because I understood chemistry, I understood biology, and I knew where to go with this. So it was really natural for me. But you are very astute in saying your perceptions are chemistry, life sciences, because a lot of folks really don't get that. And I've had this my entire life. Someone asks me what I do for a living, and I tell them, I'm a water expert. And there's, well, what the heck is that? What can you possibly do? Go stick a meter in the tap water and say, wow, look, it's good. And the first guy that hired me into I did that in the dialysis industry for about 4 years. And then a company that provided technology to hospitals and dialysis units hired me as a sales engineer. And then once I did that, it exposed me to industry and all these other things, but it was a natural progression of learning. I had that first job. I thought to myself, I need to be looking for a career, because surely, how many water systems can I sell? And the first guy that hired me, he's a mentor. I mentioned him in my book. He told me, welcome to the water industry. You'll never leave. I thought he was full of beans, but the opportunities have been marvelous. And in 35 years of my career, jobs came and went, but I was never unemployed too long. It's a very good place to be, because it is one of the highest necessities of mankind.
Someone looking to get into the water industry, how important is it for them to, well, I'm assuming they probably need to go to college for a degree similar to biology, environmental science, life sciences, something like that. I'm assuming you can't get by without higher ed degree. Is that correct in your experience?
It certainly adds to your ability to advance and to land a position. There are exceptions. The gentleman who hired me had a GED 2 years after dropping out of school. He started pushing a broom. He got someone went out on a limb and made him a delivery technician, and he learned the craft and then became national sales manager for, at the time, what was the largest water treatment company in the world. Education you can't minimize it, because it does give you credibility at that entry point. After you get in, then it's up to you what you're going to do with it. One of the things I push for is that we need more water education, more water degrees, and not necessarily college degrees, but technical degrees that prepare people for these positions that are available.
You just said something that made me think of this. So someone goes to school for what we'll say computer programming, we'll say, or they're coding in some capacity. I like to talk about coding because I have a lot of background there. For me, everything comes back to coding in the 90s. So you go to school, you learn to code, you might become an expert in a particular language. It might be C#, it might be Java, it might be some other language. When it comes to water, being an expert in water, are there further specializations where you have someone that is an expert in like water purification or something like that? Does it get more specialized, or?
It absolutely does. One of the unique things about my career is that I started off as a water user, and in a position where it was life or death. I saw what bad service was doing to patients, so it could possibly. So I took this as a very important and serious commitment I made. So for me, my advantage in the industry that helped me to grow is I actually operated and I use these systems in very highly technical arenas. And in the dialysis industry, everything you could possibly do to water, you do. When I worked at Siemens, they had specialists. They had a beverage specialist. They had an automotive specialist. They had a pharmaceutical specialist. And then they had me, who was specialized in all those things. And it used to create, used to create havoc. I'd get a big beverage job, or I'm at Procter and Gamble on a big food thing. And well, we have to send in the food and beverage guy. And well, why would you do that? He has half my experience. I mean, it's so they didn't get in my way, but you do find a lot of fractionating. If you solve somebody's water problem, nobody cares about your degree or your experience or your time in it. If you fix somebody's water, which is one of the most precious things you can do for another human being, your ears are going to perk up. And you become a guy that they call, whether it's within your company or another company, or you start your own thing. If you fix somebody's water, it's a broadcasted result.
Now, you said most times they're hiring like biochemists to be water experts, essentially, right?
Generally, chemical engineers. So the
Okay.
big water treatment companies go after chemical engineers left and right. I mentioned this before. You can share the link afterwards after you edit, but I'm going to do a blog post on the water industry and where jobs are and how you go about getting them, and even some of the educational opportunities that can help get you there. But just for argument's sake, the water industry it was in 2022 $323 billion. They're expecting it in 30 to be over $500 billion. Our water's getting dirtier. It's getting more scarce. We're doing really stupid things. There's water shortages out west, but we're building electric vehicle plants. You need 3,800 gallons of water for one battery. Elon Musk has his big factory, Giga Berlin. He can only operate at 35% because if they ran that plant full blast, nobody within 100 miles of Berlin would have drinking water. That's how water intense this is. So these kind of things, we think we're having all these green technologies, but making solar panels is filthy dirty. It's highly water consumption. And then after people wouldn't believe this, but industry does a really good job of reclaiming in their waste. If there's anything that's worth a penny, some bean counter is going to make a chemical engineer make some process to recover that. And in the water industry, specialists who do resource recovery, that's a whole additional world unto itself.
How easy is it to move around in this industry? So working for, as still like a water expert, working for one type of company and then moving to another type of company, but kind of taking that specialized knowledge you may have gotten from one place and taking it with you to potentially solve another problem. How's that movement like between companies in potentially different industries?
It depends always on the individual, what kind of interviewer you are, what your level of confidence is. But yes, there are some barriers that are really tough to cross. So for instance, one of the most widely employed areas of the water industry is people who treat water with chemicals. And every industry has cooling towers and they have boilers. And as the cooling tower recirculates water, when you see it floating through those things on the roof, it cools the temperature, and then it goes back into essentially like radiators, compartments, and all these pumps and machines, and it keeps them cool. Well, as that water circulates, it gets dirty. It picks up junk from the atmosphere. We know about Legionella, but it does a lot of different things. It starts to foam, and it can have nitrates build up in it. So there's a line of work that is chemical treaters that do nothing but add chemicals to boiler treatment and cooling tower water. That's a very good question. There are some transitions you can make. So for instance, if you're the guy for GE that's handling beverages and you there's a job opening in the power industry. Well, you don't understand maybe the water quality specifications, but you understand the technology to get there. So that's not a big hurdle. But it can be tough to cross over.
The water industry is so interesting. You know, most people, I know, at least I don't think much of it. You know, I turn my faucet on, I get water. You know, I flush the toilet, water goes out.
Yeah.
And, you know, and beyond that, you don't really think much of it unless there's some kind of water shortage or something like that. Very, very fascinating. Tommy, unfortunately, I am running a little short on time, but one thing I would like to do, whenever I'm speaking with someone, I do like to extend the courtesy. If there is a cause you believe in, a project you're working on, if you want to talk more about your business or your book, I'd like to give you a couple minutes to promote something of yours.
Sure. So, number one on my agenda, I wrote a book called Open Tap, Drink Poison. It's available on Amazon. It is an anthology of water. It talks about if you have a question about which filter's best, how does a filter work? Can I have a home water purification system, an emergency plan? What are the rising technologies? How do I read a water report? It is something that has a lot of interest, but I think a water Bible, something that people can go back to for a long time. And then other than that, I have a website, wateristhenewgold.com. You can see my neon back there, but I'll have a blog piece. Probably you'll probably have it in 2 hours, and then you can link it when you do your thing.
That sounds fantastic. I'll make sure I get that from you. I'll put that in the show notes. I'll put that on the website. It'll be fantastic. Tom, it's been awesome speaking with you and learning about what it's like to be a water expert here on Time We Discuss.
Thank you. I'm flattered that you had me.